So we're in the middle of one of the most important issues in all of thought, human thought, which is Hashem's providence. What does it mean that He's aware? What does it mean that He guides? And what we've seen so far is, first of all, that Hashem contains everything in His mind, as it were, which is different than how a human being's mind works. A human being's mind adds knowledge as it goes along. It adds an instance, or as it used to be called, an intent, don't ask me why, of an object into the mind, and then the mind works with it, and when the mind's done with it, it gets rid of the object. So for instance, if I'm thinking right now of what my son looks like, so I have an intent and an instance of my son in my mind now, and I can think about him, and then when I'm done, I get rid of it. Nothing happens to him, of course. So why is it that nothing happens to him? Because he also has an existence outside of my mind. But by Hashem, everything has an existence because it's in His mind. The existence was predicated on Hashem thinking of Him. Except that Hashem divided that into two. God divided it into two parts. One is the awareness of something, just the fact that it's in His mind. The other one is what we would call engaging it, or being involved in it. And those are two different levels. So on the level of pure existence, that's sourced in the fact that everything is in Hashem's mind. In the end, that's called the Soviv. That's called the light that circles all worlds, and it gives existence to everything that's in Hashem's mind. But when we want to talk about providence, when we want to relate to Hashem as guiding things, as engaged with them, so then we have to talk about a different level of connection between the thought and Hashem, and then we call this that He looks at it also. It's not just that He's thinking about it, but He's also looking physically, as it were, using some kind of vessels. And the vessels already predicate a completely different type of relationship, and that's what we call the Memaleh. That's what we call the light that fills all worlds in the end. So this is what we've seen so far. Another way of saying all of this, as he's going to say now, is how this was explained in the Talmud. In the Talmud, it was explained. First of all, we saw the phrase "Galui ve'yadua lifnei mi she'amar v'haya olam," that we connect the creation of the world with things being known to God, and here we mean the first level, the Sovev level, where He's only aware of it, but He's not engaging with it, and that gives creation to the world. It gives substance to the world. It gives some kind of being. In the language of Chazal, in a different place, the rabbis call this the two types of consciousness, or two types of da'at. So that's where we're holding now. So we're on page Tetvav, on Amuda Aleph. So Samuel, the prophet's mother, gives us an incredible, in her prayer, she says an incredible phrase. She says, Kikel deot avaya. God is a God of at least two types of knowledge. He knows things in two ways. And obviously this is what prayer is about. Prayer is about awakening, as it were, Hashem from looking at us just as an awareness into looking at us with the eyes, as it were, with the Einei Hashem HaMeshotatot, what we said, the vessels. So it's transforming the consciousness from the higher consciousness, which is only an awareness, and making it into the lower consciousness, which is an engagement. Because what was she asking for? She was asking Hashem to guide. She was asking Hashem to intervene. She was asking Him to change the reality where she couldn't give birth. So that requires vessels. You following? It's not so difficult. It's the same thing as, again, if I'm thinking of my son, that's one. I know about my son. Let's say that's the higher level of consciousness. If I now actually speak to him, that's a completely different level of consciousness. To speak to him, I need vessels. It's not the same thing as just thinking about it. So in God, this all happens in one place, obviously, because there's no body. So there's no mind and eyes and ears and mouth and so on. These are just different levels, as we call it, of relationship between the creation and God. So she says, Kikel Dot Avaya, that God has Shesh Shtei Bchinot Bedat. There are two types of consciousness, two types of knowledge.
But she doesn't say two types.
She says Deot. Deot is at least plural. So the minimum of plural is two. So in the Chazal say this is Dat Elyon and Dat Tachton, higher knowledge and lower knowledge. Dat Elyon v'Dat Tachton. Dat Elyon hu b'chinat makif v'sovev kol almin. So the higher knowledge is what we described as just being aware that something exists, but not engaging it, not having a relationship with it that would change it.
Which is interesting because the whole concept of das is really engagement. So when you talk about it's like the higher das is more sovev, but it probably has still some sort of aspect of
relationship. There is a relationship. It's just bringing it into being. That's all.
Right.
But not more than that.
Right.
But bringing it into being doesn't mean I'm going to tell you what to do.
Right.
In the same way that I can think about my son in my head, that doesn't affect him. I can think many, many things. They don't affect him because it's not at the lower level of consciousness. The lower level of consciousness requires some kind of vessel. So either I talk to him, I look at him, or something. Even looking has an effect. That's what we talked about.
So just thinking, the Rebbe says if you think about someone.
What?
Yeah, the Rebbe says you want to attract somebody.
Can our thought can also affect bitnai, on condition that it has a vessel. It's not enough to just think. This is something that people read the Friediger Rebbe's statement that when you think about somebody, you affect him, but it's not. It's you have to read the Maimarim on this. The Maimarim explain, the essays explain that the thought has to enter into a vessel at least of speech, at least.
Well, there are different. I mean, if you want to get more scientific about it, when your thoughts change brain waves, and there's
our brain is a vessel already.
So I'm saying,
Yeah.
that's still, so even though it's very subtle, but with brain entrainment, your brain waves can go and affect someone else's brain waves.
So to say it like more clearly, if I'm thinking of my son, and I'm not thinking of the words that I'm going to say to him, then my thought has not yet entered into a vessel of speech. If it's just a picture, for me, by me, it doesn't affect, because it's too much still Dat Elyon, still Saviv, it's still a Makif, it's surrounding light. I have to at least think of the words that I'm going to say. If I think of the words that I'm going to say, that already has an effect, even if I didn't say them yet with my physical apparatus. So by Hashem, the same thing, except by Hashem, why did the prophets use the image of Einei Hashem? Why do they call it the eyes of Hashem? The Arizal he describes levels of engagement. So he says, I think we even read this when we were learning about Tzimtzum, that the light of the eyes, that what the eyes project is the least, it has the least effect out of all the things of all our senses. The ears have a tiny bit of hevel, he calls it. They have a little bit of air that comes out. You can see it in people that smoke. They know how to actually do that, which is a trick. But it says that there's a little bit. That's why you can pop your ears when you're in pressurizing, or the opposite. The nose has more, and the mouth has the most. But the eyes have the least. So the prophets they didn't even use the symbol of God listening, even though you said here before that there's also in Kabbalah, there's also Udnei Hashem, that's like the ears of Hashem. But usually we don't even talk about ears by Hashem. We just say eyes. Why do we say eyes? Because the amount that's projected out as a vessel is the least, even in a human being. So as a metaphor, you're saying that this is completely, what would you call it, vaporous. There's nothing really, really there, but it's already a vessel. The fact that there is a vessel means that he is looking. That's what he said.
Sound waves are more physical than light waves.
Okay. Even when we look at the verse that we're learning, we see that there's a discrepancy. Ereh is I will see. Haketzakata, is it what I'm hearing? But that's what he says. I will go down into vessels, and the least of the vessels is to see, even if what I'm looking at is what it sounds like. So it's called seeing the words. Okay. So that Elionu b'chinat makif v'sovev al kol almin. The higher dat, the supernal, is what we call the surrounding light. היינו כי יש בחינת דת שיודע ורואה הכל, רק שהדת הוא בחינת מקיף, דהיינו שאינו מתפשט בעמידות להיות התפעלות מהדבר. He's not affected, and what he's looking at is not affected. What does it mean he's not affected? He knows about it, but he doesn't feel it, we call it. It doesn't transport, it doesn't transform into the emotional realm. שהוא יודע ורואה, וכעניין שאמר לא הביט אבן ביעקב, שאין הפירוש שלא הביט כלל. When we say, when Bilam said לא הביט אבן ביעקב, לא ראה עמל בישראל, so he's not saying that Hashem doesn't look at Jacob. He's saying he doesn't see the transgressions of Jacob. אלא כמו שכתוב, וירא אבן ולא התבונן. וכמו שכתוב, אם צדקת מה תיתנו. And the opposite is also true. That even when you do a mitzvah, at the level of Da'at Elyon, where Hashem is everything and the world is nothing, as it were, nothing in the sense of, not that it doesn't exist, but that it doesn't take up space in his emotions, as it were. So even if you do something good, it doesn't register. It has no value. And this is what Shlomo HaMelech means when he says that he's of pure eyes, he doesn't see evil. שאין ראייתו הרע עושה רושם והתפעלות כלל. That even when Hashem looks at evil, it doesn't make any kind of impression on him. כי סממית בידיים תתפס. Because something that is insignificant can even be in the chamber of the king. In this case, it's a little lizard that runs around, and nobody notices it because it's insignificant. ומשם מקור הסליחה והרחמים. שאין מגיע שם שום פגם, והוא למעלה מהכלים דרך הספירות. So whenever we ask Hashem for forgiveness, we're asking from that level. And that level where nothing takes up space. But then, you also can't come and say, Hashem, forgive me because I've done so many good things. Because the good things also don't count.
It's like bleach, just it's atik.
Or like what is described, it's like kanan chatotecha. It's like the impression that a cloud leaves on the ground when it makes a shadow. When it's gone, it's gone. There's nothing left. There's no shadow left on the ground, because it doesn't take up any space at all. So neither the good nor the negative takes up any space. It doesn't make an impression. רק הפגם והשכר והעונש הוא נמשך על ידי הדעת המתפשט. So this is called consciousness that extends. Where is it extending from? From the higher consciousness down to the lower consciousness. Sometimes called the dot that's between the shoulders, because he's carrying a burden already. And then it extends down into the emotions. And then it's called the lower type of consciousness, where there is an impact, where there is an emotional impression left.
I mean, it sounds like he's really explaining Atik and Arich. Except that Arich is really so more like this also. I mean, you know.
And I'm now learning again Reb Hillel, Reb Isaac, Ma'amar Shiflut V'Simcha. So he has one of the best explanations of all of this. He calls it Ratzon Pashut and Ratzon Murkav, Atik and Arich. And the example he gives is when you think about building a house, that's Ratzon Pashut. Why is it Ratzon Pashut? Because you're not committed to anything. You haven't even committed it to writing. There's nothing. If you want to change something, it costs nothing. You change it in your mind, that's it. And it's called Ratzon Pashut because the will has not been enclosed yet in anything. Nothing at all. No, not even an architect's drawing. Nothing. Ratzon Murkav has many levels to it, but the will is already enclosed within something. What's the difference? He says that Ratzon Pashut is like Atik, he says. And Ratzon Murkav is like Arich. The difference is, of course, whether this will stand without you or not. Meaning, if I even commit my thoughts to paper, so the paper will continue to exist even if I don't anymore. Okay? I can now have a relationship with but when it's only in my head, it's not a real relationship. There's no real relationship there, because in a moment I change it, or whatever it is. So it's completely amorphous.
Yeah, but in terms of the relationship between Atik and Arach, usually what we say is that the Zayin Tachtonim of Atik is Mlubash and Arach. So I think that fits really what he's saying here, that the Atik at the level of Atik is, you're saying, is more like Red La, but then when you have the Zayin Tachtonim, it's Mlubash. In order for Atik to have any impact, here it has to be Mlubash. The Zayin Tachtonim of Atik, we still don't have an impact. When they're Mlubash and Arach, then they can have an impact.
That's only a beginning. The impact comes from the dat coming down from there, from Arich. It's not enough just to be Arich.
That's true. I'm saying it's all relative. I mean, on the level of Atik and Arich, it's still Kesari, but
that's what I said.
It's still above Das.
100%. It's all relative. Meaning at any stage that you look, you'll see these relationships. But here he's talking about the very basic one, where Hashem has everything in his mind and it doesn't affect anything, it doesn't affect him. Because it's just like my thoughts that would include an entire world, but nothing would change because of my thoughts if I would change something. Versus when there are vessels. The moment there are vessels, like the paper in which I wrote my ideas, if I want to change something, I have to engage the paper. There's now something standing in and of itself. And that's called tikkun, meaning that's why it's called the world tikkun. The world before, by the way, is a world of tohu, because there's no real vessels there. And tikkun means that something can enclose in something else. So when Hashem already wants to have a real relationship, that's called itakan. It means that there's already some kind of enclosement of the light of thought within some kind of vessel. ורק הפגם והשכר והעונש שהוא נמשך על ידי הדת ומתבשל ונמשך מנידון נקרא הדת התחתון, והוא מתלבש בבחינת מעוללי כל המין, היינו בכלים ד10 ספירות דאביה, ולכן תדע זו על ידי בחינת עיני השם, שהם הכלים והמידות. So like we said, the thinnest, the clearest, like they used to call it, that the eye is the most, what do they call it, like a crystal. It's the most, it's the purest of all the organs, apart from the brain itself. The brain is considered the most transparent, as it were. The eyes are second most transparent. But the eyes are already a vessel. The brain is not a vessel, or like the symbol of the brain as it is in God is not a vessel at all. שעל ידי זה נמשך ההתוועלות שכר ועונש, שהפגם הגיע והכלים די כמה שאין כאן על ידי הידיעה שבדעת שלנו שלא על ידי הכלים דעת הספרות, על פי שהכל גלוי וידוע, לא נמשך מזה התפעלות. So that's why Hashem had to come down to see. Because really what he's saying is, I have to take my knowledge and enclose it within some vessel. And the purest form of vessel, the most supernal form of vessel, but it's already a vessel, and from that can come judgment, is the eyes. That's why it's called to see. And again, it's a metaphor. So now you should know that this is the answer to the question of how Hashem knows things and yet doesn't negate our free will. Why? שאין הידיעה שהשם ידורך יודע שזה יהיה צדיק או רשע מכרחת את הברירה כלל, ואיך הוא? How can this be? How can Hashem know? He knows absolutely whether I'll be a tzaddik or a rasha, and this does not negate to any degree my free will. לפי שידיעה זו שהשם ידורך יודע הכל, מקודם אשר נעשה זהו בחינת דעת עליון, שלא על ידי הכלים ד10 ספירות. Because there he's only thinking about it without any vessels, without enclosing the thought in it, without committing it to anything. But he knows it all. So what are we doing here? We're committing his thoughts to garments, to vessels. That's what the world is about. The world is about bringing down what Hashem knows and taking the best version of that we want and committing it to some kind of vessel, to some kind of action, to some kind of thought, to some kind of emotion, to some kind of word that we say. Because when you talk about Hashem looking at things, it's always in the past tense. So he's looking at what we decided to commit on paper. right? What we decided to commit to, how we decided in the end to act. What he's saying basically is that in Hashem's thought, all possibilities are there. And you commit, you decide which one you want to bring down into reality. שזה נראה לבחינת המלאכים והכלים דבייה שנעשה על ידי זה פגם וכתם והמלאך וכנען. And so if you're a vessel like an angel or like a sphere, what you see is the act that the human being did as being something that affected you. So if he did something good, it affected the vessels in a positive way, and if he did something negative, it affects them in a negative way. מה שאין כן הידיעה שהקדוש ברוך הוא יודע העתיד ומעשה האדם קודם שנעשה אינו על ידם כלל. כי אם ידיעה זו היא במקום גבוה מאוד בחינת דעת עליון, היא לא יודעת זה בחינת מקיף, אינו מכריח את הבחירה. שאין האדם יתפעל מזה, כמו שלא נמשך מידת זה התפעלות אפילו בעמידות עליונים. So just as the angels don't know anything, this is also a very important thing. You can't ask an angel about what's going to be. What am I going to do? Because they don't know. They only see after the fact. They're like you. They have vessels. Their vessels are more pure. So they can see maybe more. They can see from the end of the world to the end of the world. I can't see from the end of the world. Like Adam Arishon. In the beginning, he saw from the end to end. What does it mean that he saw from end to end? That he was close to seeing the way the Da'at Elyon sees. He was very close to seeing the world the way that Hashem sees it, which is, call it, completely without any engagement. And when you're willing to look at the world like that, you can see from end to end. You can see many, many generations all at once. But of course, it doesn't take away anybody's free will. Because in the end, they can still choose whatever they want. But you can see their circumstances. You can see what they're going to be facing. It doesn't negate what their free will is going to be. Because they can choose from everything that you've seen to do this or to do that. But you can see the circumstances. So you can, in a certain sense, it's like Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu saw, in the beginning of the Talach Lozna. So the Alter Rebbe gives what it means, B'chol beiti ne'eman. What does it mean that he's trusted? He's a trusted servant, Moses. So what does it mean that he's trusted? He says that he sees everything. He's allowed to see everything. And if he sees that somebody's going to be facing a terrible danger, he doesn't come and tell him, look, you're going to be facing a terrible danger. Because then he's forcing his choice. He's bringing it down into a vessel. He's telling him in words, you're going to face, this situation is dangerous. Instead, what does he say? He says, maybe you shouldn't go there today because I need you somewhere else. He says, do something for me. The person can decide he wants to do something for Moshe Rabbeinu, or doesn't want to do something for him. He finds some kind of excuse to give him choice to not go there, if that place is dangerous for him. But it's still up to the person whether he's going to listen to him or not. But if I tell you it's good for you, or it's bad for you, that's not being trustful to what you've been shown. It's not being trustworthy. Because you can't take away the person's free will. It's something, one of the things that boggles my mind. But there's a lot of the world now is into Chassidus, especially the Tilumi. Right? And the Yarmulkes. So they learn a lot of Chassidus, and they read all these wonderful stories. What a great Rebbe did this, another great Rebbe did this. And they think that their Rav is like a Rebbe. And they can't tell the difference. They don't know the basic call it litmus test for deciding whether somebody is on the up and up or whether he's a con man. And he doesn't even know that he's a con man. Some of them, they don't even know themselves. So what does Shlomo Melech say about this? He says, "Im Rav ki malach Hashem tzvakotu." So Chazal say, the rabbis say, if he's like an angel of God, so learn Torah from him. What does an angel of God look like? I've never seen an angel. So now we know what an angel of God looks like. He only tells you after the fact. He won't tell you before what to do. In other words, if he tries to take any amount of your free will away, he's a fake. Even if he doesn't know that he's fake. Even if he doesn't know, he's not trustworthy. That's the whole thing. You can't take away somebody's free will. You can come and say, do it for me. Say it for me. You like me, you love me, do something for me. I need a favor from you. But you can't tell somebody, this is bad for you. Don't do this. Again, when it's not according to Seichel. Again, if you see something and you say, in any case, the main thing is whether he's telling you to do things or not. He can't tell you to do things. It's the tremendous secret of the difference between somebody who's truly an emissary of God or somebody who's just working for himself. And even he thinks that he's
often
not.
tell people what to do.
That's not what he means. He means that the Rebbe would tell people, would recommend mitzvos. You know, the Rebbe put a mezuzah, kasher kitchen, you know.
Left. There were plenty of people who told us. The guy came together, and the Rebbe said, so you're going to get your leg checked. He had a gidul in his leg. I often tell people what to do.
For who?
For themselves.
Said it. That's what the people interpreted as.
But listen to what the Rebbe didn't say you have a problem. He said go check this out. But the Rebbe didn't know. He said go check it out.
He didn't take away anybody's free will. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You weren't happy with that answer.
No.
Because you want him to take away your free will.
No.
Said it. So that's the care of somebody who's real, that he doesn't take away your free will.
He thinks, therefore we are.
Said it.
He thinks, therefore I am.